What would you do if you woke up one morning and found strangers wandering through your backyard, picking your tomatoes, petting your animals, and taking selfies, because your HOA decided, without asking, that your land now belonged to the entire neighborhood? That was exactly what happened to me. I had just stepped outside with my morning coffee when I saw them, 5 strangers meandering through my vegetable garden like they were on a guided tour. A little boy crouched next to my chicken coop, pointing at my prized rooster, while his mother snapped pictures on her phone. Another man plucked a ripe tomato from the vine and took a bite like he owned the place. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. "Excuse me," I called out, forcing a polite tone. "This is private property." The woman with the phone looked up, confused. "Oh, but the sign says this is the Willow Creek Community Farm Experience. Open to all residents from 9 to 5. My stomach dropped. "What sign?" She pointed toward the edge of my property. Heart pounding, I walked to the front of my land, where a brand new wooden sign had been installed overnight. Large, elegant lettering declared, "Willow Creek Community Farm and Zoo. All residents welcome, open daily 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I hadn't put that sign there. Someone else had. I stared at it, my pulse hammering in my ears. I had spent 15 years saving every penny from my job as an agricultural scientist to buy this land, moving in just 3 months ago. My farm was my dream, 5 acres of organic produce, free-range chickens, and carefully maintained soil. The real estate agent had assured me that Willow Creek Estates allowed tasteful gardening and sustainable living. At no point did anyone mention that my private farm would be turned into a public attraction for suburban families. The woman's face twisted in confusion when I explained there must have been a mistake. She hesitated, then sighed. "That's odd. Vicki Thompson from the HOA told us about this place at the community meeting last night. She said you were excited to share your farm with everyone." Vicki Thompson. I had met her once when I moved in. She had eyed my moving boxes of gardening supplies with thinly veiled disgust and made it clear she didn't approve of my farm ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around the wooden post of the sign. I knew HOAs could be overbearing, but this? This was beyond anything I had imagined. And something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke to the sound of car doors slamming and excited chatter. I barely had time to throw on a jacket before stepping outside, and what I saw made my blood boil. A line of minivans and SUVs stretched down my driveway, families piling out with picnic baskets, cameras, and even empty containers, like they were about to pick berries from my land. A woman approached me, holding the hands of 2 toddlers. "Are you the farmer?" she asked brightly. "The newsletter said you'd be giving a tour today, and the kids are so excited to pick their own vegetables." I stared at her, stunned. What? She smiled like I was the one being weird. "We already paid the HOA activity fee." "Excuse me?" My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. "The community farm experience. It was in the newsletter," she said. "We paid Vicki $15 per family." I did the math on the spot, 40 families at $15 each. That was $600. $600 Vicki had pocketed from people who were now trespassing on my land. Before I could respond, a group of teenagers ran past me, chasing my chickens. Another woman squatted next to my tomato plants, plucking them straight from the vine. A man with a camera was inside my greenhouse, touching the temperature controls. I stepped forward, my voice loud and clear. "This is private property. The HOA has no right to invite anyone onto my land, let alone take your money for it. If you paid, I suggest you ask for a refund." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people looked embarrassed, gathering their kids and hurrying back to their cars. Others weren't so understanding. A man in a golf shirt scowled at me. You can't just cancel at the last minute. My kids were looking forward to this. I never agreed to any of this, I snapped. I'm not running a community farm. This is my home. The crowd thinned out, but I could hear them grumbling as they left. What a shame, one woman muttered. She could be a team player about this. As soon as the last car pulled away, I marched back inside and started digging. If the HOA thought they could steal from me, lie about my farm, and get away with it, they had another thing coming. I spent the rest of the afternoon driving through Willow Creek, taking pictures of HOA board members' houses. Vicky and her inner circle had dozens of violations. Unauthorized paint colors, prohibited fencing, even illegal home extensions. If they wanted to enforce HOA rules, they should start with themselves. Then I found something even bigger. While searching county records, I discovered that the HOA had filed paperwork claiming my farm as a community agricultural heritage site, without my knowledge. They were using my land to get a tax exemption. I gritted my teeth. They weren't just trespassing anymore. They were profiting off my property. Furious, I printed everything out, preparing to confront Vicky at the next HOA meeting. But I never got the chance. That night, I woke to the sound of rustling outside my window. I crept to the porch, heart pounding, and found trash, rotting food, broken glass, and old newspapers, scattered across my farm. And that wasn't the worst part. A county health department notice was stapled to my front door. Notice of health violation, unsanitary conditions detected. My hands shook with rage. The only people who had been on my farm today were Vicky's tour groups. This was a setup. As I processed the scene, a car idled at the edge of my driveway. Someone was watching me. When I took a step forward, the engine revved, and the car sped off into the night. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Should have just played along. Now it's gonna get worse. The next morning, I didn't wait for the HOA to make their next move, I made mine first. I packed my folder of legal documents, property deeds, and the fraudulent tax filings and drove straight to Wilson's Market, the biggest grocery store in town. As soon as I stepped inside, I spotted Tom Garcia, the store owner, stacking fresh produce. The second he saw me, he smiled. "There's my star supplier," he called out. "Your rainbow carrots sold out in 2 hours yesterday. When can I get more?" I could feel the weight of two women nearby, standing by the tomatoes, casually chatting, but their HOA badges glinted under the store lights. I spoke loud enough for them to hear. "Actually, Tom, I might have trouble meeting our contract next month," I said, setting my papers down on his display. "Some folks from Willow Creek's HOA are making it impossible for me to run my farm." The women froze, one of them slowly turned toward me. Tom frowned, looking genuinely concerned. "That would be terrible. Your produce is the reason people shop here instead of the big chain stores." I nodded solemnly. "I'd hate to let you down, but the HOA is claiming my farm violates community rules. They've even started bringing tour groups onto my land without permission." The two women gasped, recognition flashed across their faces as the truth hit them all at once. They weren't just hearing a complaint about an HOA dispute. They were hearing that the food they'd been raving about, the fresh, organic vegetables they proudly served at their dinner tables, came from the very farm their HOA was trying to destroy. The first woman hesitated before stepping forward. "Wait, are you saying you supply Wilson's Market?" I met her eyes. "Not just Wilson's. I supply about 60% of the fresh produce they sell. Plus, I handle the herbs and specialty items for Harvest Table Restaurant." The second woman's face paled. "Harvest Table? But, that's where we hold our monthly HOA dinners." "How interesting," I mused. "Did Vicky also mention that she's been charging families for unauthorized tours on my land? She's already made over $600 from residents, without my consent. They exchanged alarmed glances. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads. That was only the first move. By the time I returned home, word had spread. The HOA newsletter that once praised my community farm was now flooded with angry resident comments. Some were demanding refunds. Others were questioning why Vicky was profiting off land that wasn't hers. But Vicky wasn't about to back down quietly. That afternoon, I found another tour group being led around my property by a teenage girl in an official-looking community guide badge. She was pointing at my chicken coop, explaining that the farm lady would let people hold the chickens for an extra $5. I stormed over. Absolutely not. These animals are not playthings, and no one has permission to be here. The girl's face went white. But Mrs. Thompson hired me. She gave me this badge and everything. I took a photo of the badge before escorting everyone off my property. Most of them apologized, now realizing they had been duped into participating in something illegal. That's when I met Walt Matthews. He lingered behind after the crowd left, watching me with a thoughtful expression. He was an older man with a cane, someone I had seen around but never spoken to. "I've been watching this situation," he said, voice low. "And I think you need to know something about the Thompsons." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He sighed, leaning on his cane. "Vicky and her husband have been grabbing power in this community for years. But this isn't about a farm." A chill ran down my spine. "They're planning to develop the green space behind your property into condos," he continued. "Your farm doesn't fit their vision. If they can force you out, they'll have a larger, connected parcel of land to sell for millions." The realization settled like a stone in my gut. This wasn't just about an overreaching HOA. This was about real estate greed. I needed proof. The next day, I went to the county records office and spent hours poring over zoning regulations, development permits, and old HOA documents. Then I found it. The entire area, including my farm, was designated as a protected agricultural heritage zone. Any development required special permits and public hearings. Vicky's plans weren't just aggressive, they were illegal. I had one last move to make. As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Vicky and her husband, Rick, standing by my vegetable beds. Behind them, 2 HOA workers hammered pathway markers into my land. They were building their community farm experience right in front of me. I parked and got out, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Remove those markers. Now." Rick crossed his arms, that fake developer's smile plastered on his face. "We're just installing some simple pathways to make the farm experience safer. The HOA approved it yesterday." I pulled out my phone, flipping to the legal document I had found. "This development is illegal under county zoning laws. My farm is on protected agricultural land. You can't build here without special permits." Vicky's smile vanished. "That's not possible," she snapped. "Those laws were changed years ago." I tilted my head. "Were they?" Then I pulled out a copy of the original HOA covenant, signed 30 years ago. "Walt Matthews kept copies of everything from when this neighborhood was first developed," I said. "Including the original, legally binding covenant that still protects my land." Rick's expression darkened. Vicky's phone rang. She answered, and within seconds, her face drained of color. "What do you mean we have no produce for tonight?" she hissed into the phone. "Call our backup supplier." I folded my arms. "Oh? Problem with your restaurant, Vicky?" She slowly lowered her phone, eyes narrowing. "You did this on purpose," she seethed. I smiled. "I simply paused my deliveries to review my contracts. Funny how your husband's farm-to-table restaurant relies so heavily on my unsightly farm." Vicky turned to Rick, whispering urgently. His face went rigid. I let my next words sink in like a blade. I wonder how your fancy HOA residents will feel when they find out that their favorite grocery store, restaurant, and catering company all depend on the farm you tried to destroy. Vicky gritted her teeth. Rick's jaw clenched. And just like that, I knew, I had them. That night, I barely slept. I had exposed Vicky's corruption, turned her own HOA members against her, and cut off the food supply to her husband's restaurant. She was losing, and she knew it. But something told me she wasn't done yet. I was right. At 2 a.m., a loud metallic clatter jolted me awake. My stomach lurched as I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside. My chicken coop gate swung open, and my hens were missing, feathers littered the ground, and a pair of wire cutters glinted in the moonlight. A cold fury settled over me. This wasn't just vandalism. This was sabotage. I scanned the darkness, my pulse hammering. That's when I saw it, a figure slipping behind a hedge at the edge of my property. Even in the dim light, I recognized the silhouette, the perfectly styled hair. The designer jacket ***. Vicky. She was watching, waiting to see me panic. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the wire cutters, and the monogrammed initials on the handle, VT. Vicky Thompson. I bit back a smile. She had just made a huge mistake. By the time I had gathered my panicked chickens, my mind was already turning. Vicky thought she could break me, exhaust me, force me to give up, but if she wanted a war, I was ready. Except she wasn't done. At sunrise, I woke to the rumble of heavy machinery. I threw on my boots and ran outside, then froze. A bulldozer sat at the edge of my land. Workers in HOA uniforms hammered bright orange markers into my soil, mapping out something big. A massive wooden sign stood in my front yard, freshly installed overnight. Willow Creek Community Farm and Zoo, permanent site development begins Monday. I didn't move for a full 5 seconds. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. Then my fury snapped. I stormed toward the workers, ***, get off my land, ***. The lead contractor barely looked up. Sorry, ma'am. We're just following HOA orders. These are approved development pathways. Approved by who? I shot back. A smug voice answered from behind me. By the board, Vicky said, stepping onto my property like she owned it. Rick stood beside her, arms crossed. I turned slowly. You have no legal right to do this. Rick gave me his signature fake businessman smile. Actually, we do. Vicky held up a thick stack of documents, flipping to a specific page. Section 8.4 of the HOA bylaws states that if a homeowner fails to maintain community standards, the HOA can step in and make modifications. I narrowed my eyes. And what exactly have I failed to maintain? Vicky's smile widened. Oh, let's see, your compost bins. Violation. Your chickens. Nuisance. Your rainwater system. Unapproved structure. You've refused to comply, so we're stepping in. Construction begins Monday morning. I stared at her, barely able to breathe through my rage. She wasn't just trying to push me out now, she was trying to take my land outright. Rick clapped his hands together. Look, Rachel, you can fight us, or you can work with us. You might even benefit from this. Think bigger. With a little investment, we could turn this farm into an ecotourism destination. We'll make sure you get a small cut of the profits. My stomach twisted. They weren't just stealing my land, they were offering me pocket change to let them ruin everything I'd built. I took a slow, steady breath, then I smiled. You really think you can pull this off? I asked quietly. Vicky's eyes glinted with triumph. I know I can. Rick smirked. Hope you don't plan on going to court, Rachel. That could take years, and in the meantime, you'll have a construction site on your front lawn. I tilted my head, pretending to consider. That does sound terrible. Then I pulled out my phone. Vicky's smirk wavered. What are you doing? I held the phone high in the air. Oh, just live streaming this conversation. You know, for the residents. Thought they'd like to hear how you're spending their HOA fees. Vicky's face drained of color. Rick's jaw clenched. But it was too late, my phone screen was already filling with angry comments from homeowners. Wait, is this real? She's stealing land? Why is my HOA money going to this? And then the worst comment for Vicky. I just called the county commissioner. This is illegal. The workers stopped hammering, one of them checked his clipboard, then turned to Rick. Sir, we were told this was HOA approved. But if this isn't legal? Rick spun on him, keep working. But the damage was done. A few of the workers murmured to each other, one of them ripped out a marker stake and threw it on the ground. I'm not getting sued over this, he muttered. I'm out. One by one, the crew walked off the job. I crossed my arms. Huh. Looks like you won't be starting construction on Monday after all. Vicky's face twisted in fury. You think this is over? I smiled. No. But I do think you just lost. Vicky let out a strangled scream, turned, and stomped to her car. Rick followed, but not before throwing me a look so sharp it could cut glass. I watched them leave, my heart pounding. I had stopped them this time, but something told me Vicky wasn't done. And I had one last card to play. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, my live stream exposing Vicky's scheme had spread like wildfire. Angry homeowners flooded the HOA forum, demanding answers. Residents who had once blindly followed her rules were now questioning where their money had been going. Even those who didn't particularly like me were furious at the thought of their HOA fees being used to fund Rick's failing restaurant and an illegal land grab. By the end of the week, the county had officially opened an investigation into the HOA's financial dealings. A formal complaint was filed against Vicky for fraudulent use of community funds, and the development plans for the community farm experience were shut down permanently. Meanwhile, Harvest Table Restaurant was in chaos. With my farm's produce permanently cut off, Rick was forced to source low-quality ingredients at triple the price. His regulars noticed. Reviews plummeted overnight. Customers started canceling reservations. Within a month, the restaurant had shut its doors for good. But the final blow came at the next HOA meeting. The room was packed, tension hanging thick in the air. Malcolm, the HOA president, avoided eye contact as he announced that Vicky had resigned from her position, effective immediately. A few die-hard supporters muttered about property values, but no one fought to keep her. She didn't even bother to show up. 3 weeks later, I spotted a moving truck parked outside Vicky's house. I stood on my porch, sipping my coffee, as she loaded the last of her belongings into the back seat of her car. She didn't look at me, but I saw the rage burning in her eyes. She had lost. And she knew it. As for my farm, it was safer than ever. The old agricultural covenant had been officially reinstated, meaning no future HOA board could ever try to pull the same stunt again. The fraudulent fines and fees that Vicky had threatened me with? Completely wiped away. And after everything, my neighbors, even the ones who had originally opposed me, started coming to my farm, not to trespass, but to support it. Tom Garcia at Wilson's Market reached out, offering me a long-term contract. A local catering business wanted an exclusive deal for my produce. Even the school district sent a proposal for a farm-to-school program. I had gone from a target of HOA harassment to the most important supplier in town. And Vicky? She had gone from Queen of Willow Creek Estates to a disgraced ex-HOA leader moving out in shame. The HOA had tried to control me, to bully me into submission, to take everything I had worked for. But in the end, they underestimated me. They thought I was just some farmer, just another homeowner they could steamroll. They were wrong. Have you ever had to fight back against an HOA or a power-hungry Karen? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.